Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way Show. I am your host, Trent Clark, CEO of Leadership, a serial entrepreneur. I am the author of Leading Winning Teams, and I am a growth coach, helping people through Bloom Coach double, sometimes triple, and 10x their company values all day long. Most people know me, though, because I spent over 13 years and 3 World Series in professional baseball. So today on the Winners Find a Way Show, I welcome my friend and special guest, Mark G. Astor. What's up, Mark? How are you, buddy?
I am good, and wow, I don't know if I've ever been introduced like that, so I'll take that all day long, and it is really a pleasure to be with you, and I'm grateful for being here. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, and people aren't going to pick it up, but like Mark is from the other side of the pond. He's an England man. He's from the UK, and he came over to the States. U of M grad. So, he's a Michigan guy. I like to have Michigan folks on. Like, listen, if I'm going to have like people from Michigan, Wolverines, Spartans. I'm going to have people on, right?
Well,
So, Mark, but now down in Boca, got your went to law school at Nova. So, only did the Midwest thing for a little while. Is that fair?
yeah, I'm afraid that winter just sort of pushed me back down to Florida where it's a little warmer, especially during the winter.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. I've been pushing for the South a long time. Obviously, in pro ball, I was with the Tigers and the Indians. And then I got to join the Angels in Southern California and live in Phoenix. And I bought a property and kept it forever, right? Like that was always good to have a property down south. So good friends down in Boca Raton, where you're at now, of course. And special today with Mark Astor on the Winners Find a Way, because we're going to talk. Mark has a very specialty law firm. Mark works in a category that you're not going to hear from a lot of lawyers. Mark is about saving families. And Mark, first of all, tell them where they can find you.
So they can find us online at mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Or frankly, if you just Google my name, you'll find me. I put out a lot of content on social media. I'm a big believer that people need to get information about how they can help their family, and they shouldn't have to pay me for it. So if you Google me, you'll find me on pretty much every medium.
I love it. And one of the things most people don't think, this is probably a little bit of a bad rap, but like attorneys are absolutely requirements needed, specialists, and help a lot of people. I'd never want to discount that. I think they get a bad rap for not helping people, but you have gone above and beyond about keeping families together, especially families with adult children that are battling mental health, addiction, all sorts of different categories here. And you've got a tough clientele, and they call you for hard things. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, our clients are very emotional when they come to us. We're typically the last port of call, and we have a very narrowly defined mission, which, as you pointed out, Trent, is to save the family. Because while they might have a loved one who is sick and very ill and has been for a long time, it's the family that is just being completely wrecked and destroyed by what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that does I think most of us, if you reach 45, 50 years old, see that that's just not uncommon, right? And most of us unfortunately have seen somewhere that near home, whether it's in a immediate family member, a secondary family member, or a close friend. And man, it doesn't make it any easier to be in the path of that addiction, of those challenges, of those things that people are trying to drive through. And I know a good friend of mine is now celebrating, I think, his 7th or 8th year of sobriety.
Amazing.
And I mean, 11, 12 years, off the reservation, man. And I mean, that's rough. That's rough on your family.
And I bet he works on his recovery every single day.
Every day.
Yep.
Every day, man. Committed. Like he's not interested. He's committed, right, Mark? Like this is not something for the faint at heart when we talk about recovery. You've got to be all in. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any disease. You get yourself into the point of recovery, and then you work on it to maintain that. And if you don't, I mean, you got a relapse or something even worse. So I really appreciate you sharing that because that's an important thing to know about part of the journey into the recovery process.
How, I see a lot of folks who seem to get, like, let's talk mental health for a second. And I see a lot of folks who get to a point where they're really in a great position of management of health, exercise, eating right, and some, maybe some medication to make sure that they, and then all of a sudden they drop one or two of those components, right? It's like all of a sudden, hey, I'm feeling pretty good, right? So I don't want to do this anymore, like the nutrition part, or I don't want to take the meds anymore. And it's not a immediate off the reservation challenge. It's a drift into back into an abyss that becomes and spins out of control somewhat rapidly. And I've seen it time and time again. Um, Big challenges for people that are close to folks that are going through that.
Yeah, I think what happens is, and we see it a lot, is that somebody, starts to take their medications, they feel good. They're like, oh, well, I'm fine. Why should I take my
Yeah.
medications, right? Or sometimes the family says, he's good, she's good, they're stabilized. We don't need to go through with this anymore. We don't need the courts involved, and they back off. And then there's a relapse, and you get the sort of stopping and starting and stopping, and it can be frustrating for us too because the courts just don't move that way, and judges don't like having cases filed and yanked and filed and yanked. And at some point, someone says, "Hold on a second, it can't be that big of an emergency because you stopped and started this 3 times already, Mr. Astor. So what is it? Is it an
Mm.
emergency or it's not?" But I also understand that it's a very serious commitment of time, energy, and money to go to get the courts involved and go through the recovery process. And by the time a family comes to us, they're exhausted. They're exhausted. They've spent all this time, all this money, and they're emotionally spent. And so asking them to make another commitment in the belief that somehow there's a solution to this, never-ending problem is a big ask. And so I totally understand it. But what we do is not a magic pill, right? It's a journey. And I tell most families this is a year-long journey. Not that you have to hire me for a year, but when your loved one has been sick for 5, 10, 15, even longer years, I want you to think that this is a journey. The journey's going to take us a year to get there, right? And over time,
Hmm.
it's going to get better. Over time, the family starts to heal, but it is a journey and it's a process. And if you don't complete it, then you sort of take a giant step back.
When did you know that Astor Samovich Law was going to be your purpose? This is a law firm of you and your wife. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it was me and my wife is my law partner, and for the first 7 years, it was just the two of us. We're now, the last 2 and a bit years, we've hired staff to help us. Um, it's been a little bit of a journey for me. It took me a long time to really find my mission. I've been a practicing lawyer now for 31 years. My wife 33 years. In fact, we went to law school together. We were 2 years apart, and apparently our paths never crossed. Or if they did, I was distracted by other people. Um, but it took me until basically about 12 years ago to really realize that the reason I had been miserable, because I had been miserable for a long time. I'd been married and
Hmm.
divorced. I had a very successful criminal defense practice. I made a lot of money, and I was absolutely miserable. I tried everything to find a little happiness and purpose in my life. And without getting into the minutia right now, I met somebody who became a mentor that owned a personal growth company, full lawyers. And I basically begged him for a job after seeing him speak, and I spent a year working for him. And that year of personal development and also learning about the business side of being a lawyer, how to be an entrepreneur and be a lawyer and help people, that was the catalyst for me. And then it was just a matter of, okay, who do I really want to help? Like, who's my target audience? Who's the group of people that I think I can make the most impression with? What's the biggest dent I can make in the universe? And when I sat down and thought about it, I realized through my most of my adult life, I had close family members, friends who had these behavioral health issues. Now, back in 16, when I opened up in February of 16, out of the local library here in Boca, because I had no money for a law firm and I was broke. I was mostly targeting people with recreational drug and alcohol issues because those were the sum and substance of most of the cases. Um, then COVID and marijuana COVID came along, marijuana got legalized here in Florida, and that really caused the dramatic shift in the kinds of cases that we get. Most of the cases that we get now are mental health driven cases, and there may be some drug use, particularly marijuana, but they are primarily mental health issues, and that makes them clinically challenging and legally challenging and emotionally challenging. And so, I mean, it's not like, oh, file a bunch of paperwork. Yeah, we're good, right? I mean, we're on the journey with the client. And the one thing that's predictable about a behavioral health case is it's unpredictable. Someone's in treatment, they walked out. You
Yeah.
know, someone's in treatment, now they're on the streets. They took their meds, they stopped taking their meds. The meds stopped working. They got Baker Acted, which is our version, a statute here in Florida that allows the state to take custody of you when you need a very high level of care because you're having some type of mental health breakdown.
Yeah.
And you know, we could be occasionally we're running between we could be in 3 different courtrooms in 3 different proceedings at the same time on the same case. So this can get hectic. So understanding how all of these things work together is very, very important in navigating through the legal, maze, as it were, so that we can get the client the right result, get the family the right result, get their loved one into treatment, and keep them there long enough in a clinically appropriate facility. So there's a lot of moving parts with these cases, and they are very challenging sometimes. And when the client, the family comes to us, the last thing they really have in mind is patience. They want it done now. And
Yeah.
so we have to manage a lot of moving parts. And we're in the court system, and we can only move as fast as the clerk of the court accepts the case or as fast as the judge can set a hearing. And so we have to work within those confines. But when clients work to program and they have a little patience with us and we go through the process, yeah, the results are terrific. When they don't, tragic things unfortunately can happen. And that's not a fun phone call to get from a family.
No, no. Let's talk about the clientele base that's coming to you. Um, First of all, tell people, any email. I know we have mental health addiction law firm.com, mental health law. I'm sorry, mental health addiction law firm.com is the
Yep.
website.
It's our main website.
And it's your main website. And who are your clients? Who are calling you to engage you? Like, hey, we need help in this. We don't know how to navigate. Is it because they have an adult child who's under the Baker Act and has been and I don't know if that's incarcerated or held, because of a mental health condition? Is it because they're trying to get benefits and they're not receiving them? What's the general reason why people call you?
Yeah, I mean the general reason, and it's typically the mum and dad that call us, not always, but most of the time it is because they can't get their loved one to stay in treatment or go to the right treatment center, stay there long enough. They won't take their meds, all of the above, right? And so, and you bring up the Baker Act. Maybe they've already been Baker Acted 3, 4 times, or maybe they're even in
Yeah,
facility right now. Because if you get Baker Acted, and I, I've had a family member Baker Act, and I was there when it went down. It wasn't a fun experience for me. It's not a fun
right.
experience for any family. Um, so maybe now the state has them, and we want to get the state out of the way because unfortunately the state does a lousy job of taking care of people who have behavioral health issues. So maybe the state's there. Maybe they've already been committed to a hospital, and there's a court order in place. So we need to get the state out of the way here, so the family can start taking some control again. And every case is a little bit different in terms of how we approach it, and what are we going to do? So
You're taking a legal approach to a family helping a person who's ill, who's facing this disease, who's not probably acting all the time in their best interest, and the family sees that this is the best interest. And are you putting a court order to their treatment? Like, hey, you have to stay under the court order and you have to be getting this treatment for 30, 60, 100 days, 120 days, like whatever it is. Is that a goal sometimes for parents?
Yeah. So when we speak to the family, it's sometimes hard for them to grasp, objectively, why is their loved one doing this themselves? And I explain it to them. I say, listen, your loved one's brain has been kidnapped. It looks like them, it sounds like them, it walks like them, but their brain has been kidnapped. It's been hijacked by this disease. And so they are not capable of making a decision to save themselves. In fact, the disease does not want to go to treatment. It does not want them to take their medications because if they do, guess what? The disease goes into recovery and it goes bye-bye. So
Yeah.
the kidnapped brain is going to fight like hell and resist everything, which is why it looks like it looks like a complete form of insanity because it really
Yeah.
is to some extent. And so initially when we started doing this kind of work back in 16, it was I basically had one statute that I operated under, which was the Marchman Act. And it took 14 months of me going around giving out business cards that I had printed as cheap as I possibly could for someone to actually call me and say, hey, I have this Marchman Act case. Can you help me? In fact, the first case I took was a student athlete, a baseball player who was
What explain real quick what the Marchman Act is?
okay. So the Marchman Act is a statute that is unique to Florida. There is really nothing else quite like it anywhere in the U.S. that allows a family to petition a court where there is a primary substance use disorder, drug use, alcohol use, abuse of prescription medications. And it allows us to basically take that person and put them into treatment for a period of up to 90 days, which can be repeated. But
Okay.
what's also neat about the Marchman Act is if we can establish emergency criteria, I can get a court order to basically have the police go and get them and collect them and take them to a receiving facility somewhere where we can keep them safe for a very brief period of time, 3 to 7 days, before we get back in front of the judge for a full blown hearing. So it's got a really neat component to it. So that was my bread and butter for a long time. And then I met my wife the second year of the practice, and she had been living in Boston for many years. So she had her children with their dad, and she practiced guardianship law. And I think what we figured out was that we could use this guardianship statute, which had really been designed for elderly people, to help the clients that we had, because guardianship is much broader in its relief, meaning you can have a lot more control with a guardianship than you can with a Marchman Act. But because it's broader, it takes a little longer to get. It's kind of like the difference between a pickup truck and a sports car, right? Pickup truck can tow a boat, but a sports car gets you there quicker in theory. But they both get you from A to B, but one does a slightly different job than the other. And so when we first started using guardianship, oh God, 9 years ago, we did some, but there weren't as many. Now with these really severely mental health driven cases, we do a lot of guardianship, as much if not more than we do Marchman Act, and sometimes we'll do them together because the families need max control with what is a completely out of control situation.
I love the way you describe the kidnapping of the brain, right? I think it's exactly, that sounds exactly right to me when I've seen it, and it's like it looks like the person, and they're still moving like themselves, but all of a sudden the thought process is shifted, and it feels like there is almost a second being. I almost feel like a demon, right? That's in there, and the way you describe that like that kidnapper doesn't want to go. Like they're in it for the haul. And so when we talk about winners find a way, I love the quote from the Four Disciplines of Execution. Winners, when shown data that they're losing, find a way to win. Now, one of your first cases, this young player, this young baseball player, he's not winning, right? Walk us through how he gets back to winning.
Okay, so this is, you got to remember, this was the first case I'd ever had where
Yeah.
somebody actually paid me money. And at the time, it was a significant amount of money. I won't tell you what it was, but needless to say, it seemed like a lot of money at the time because I didn't have enough money. I couldn't even take anybody. I couldn't take a girl out on a date. That's how broke I was. I ended up. I made so many trips to go to see this kid up in his university. I spent all the money on gas anyway and hotels. I didn't make any money out of it, but it was a good start. But so we were dealing with it. The family had been referred to me because I had a background in criminal law. I'd been a prosecutor for many years. I'd done a lot of defense work, and I was comfortable in that arena, and I was ready to fight for this kid. And basically, him and another student athlete were accused of having a rendezvous with a female student. And not only was his scholarship at risk, and there was also a risk that he could be, you know, expelled from the school, but there was some possibility the university lawyer would wanted to refer the case to the state attorney's office for criminal prosecution. And we were talking about an allegation of sexual battery, which is a first degree felony. You go to
Hmm.
prison for a long, long time. So there was a lot at risk here. And I reviewed the evidence, and I was absolutely convinced that the kid had done nothing wrong. And the girl, you know, very sweet in nature, but she didn't complain about it for 3 weeks until some of the other students on the campus found out about it, and she was humiliated and embarrassed. Fortunately for him, there was a whole trail of text messages where she had invited him and the other boy to go over there and, well, be
Yeah.
intimate with both of them. And I'll leave it
Hmm.
at that. And ultimately, we saved the kid's scholarship. He finished up playing baseball and did not get referred to the state attorney's office. And he went on with his life, which was a beautiful thing. But it was very rewarding for that, But wow, I mean, a lot of risk for this kid. And he came from a great family, and he had done nothing wrong.
Yeah, this is a challenging environment, man. That one particularly is really challenging because I really want to honor, that I'm sure there's men who have behaved badly in those environments with women, and I'm sure that's happened. I know recently the famed Duke lacrosse team,
Oh,
right? And the woman has now come forward and said, "Hey, I lied about it all," right? And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like now, I don't know how many years ago this has got to be what 20 years ago. I
yeah. I mean,
mean,
listen, you had a district attorney there, Mike Nifong, who was ultimately disbarred, who from what I've read and understood, he wanted to run for governor, and he figured this case was going to make him famous, and he'd make an example of these boys and send them all to prison. And he had this victim who obviously had lied to law enforcement. She had lied to the state attorney's office, and he knew it and ran with it anyway. And it wasn't unlike a little bit like the case I had, where I had a lawyer who represented the university, and he said, I've got a daughter who's the same age as this girl, and I'm going to make sure your guys never play baseball and they get expelled, and I'm going to refer the case to the state attorney's office." And I said, "Hold on a second." I said, "He's presumed innocent, number one, and number two, the evidence I have suggests he's done nothing wrong. And I also have, I have 5 nieces and I have 2 grandnieces, and I know that
yeah,
you have a daughter too." I said, "But that's got nothing to do with this case. We don't make an
yeah,
example out of him because you've got a daughter too. It's not right, and he didn't do anything wrong." And we just had
yeah.
somebody who just was gung ho to nail the kid without any evidence to support it.
I feel both sides of this, right? I'm an athlete, and the FBI came into us in pro ball every year saying, "Hey, these are things you have to watch out for. This is not just happenstance. These things happen all the time." And then in the same breath, I do have a wife and daughter, right? Like, so I know exactly what and I think what you started out with from the beginning, Mark, just really really is so important in this. This is emotionally charged. Everything is emotional about this from both sides, right? There's so much to lose. There's so much to, there's humility, there's just humiliation, there's guilt, there's shame, there's just all the mix of emotions. And of course, anger's getting in there too. And I can only imagine your cases. You're called to be the level guy, right? You're called to be the guy who can objectively go through this and manage the emotion. How hard is that?
Well, when it was just me, myself, and I, and my now wife, it was very difficult because we were doing the sales, the marketing, drafting every pleading, going to court. I mean, we were doing everything, so it became difficult. Since the firm has grown, I now have a team. I have 2 case managers, I have 3 paralegals, a couple of law clerks, and a soon-to-be second associate, and so that has helped us to be able to manage the emotional component. So, I tell the families, look, there's always going to be somebody that can reach out. You can reach out to. Our phones are on to 24/7. I don't give my cell phone out anymore because it just became unmanageable. Right? You get a
Wow.
call in the morning. It's only so much I can do. I'm a lawyer. I'm not 911. So
Yeah.
there's only so much I can do, especially on the weekend when the courts are closed. But
Right.
we do the very best we can to make sure that that we support our families as best as we can. And look, I'm not a clinician, and if a family needs a referral, and I'm a big fan of telling families, look, while your loved one is in treatment, you need to take time for yourself to heal, because whether you know it or not, you've been traumatized by this, and it's been so long since you led a normal life. You don't even know what it is to live without this in your life. And so I
Mm.
encourage families to a lot of good facilities will have a family program. If they don't, fine, let's find you somebody so that you can deal with this. Because believe it or not, you are you're traumatized, and you need to address this, or you won't be equipped to handle your loved one when they're in recovery.
Yeah, and we're hearing more and more of that, right, from this addiction world about PTSD and going through living through that from this front row seat, right? And like, hey, we and I know a lot of people my age think like, oh, PTSD, that's for soldiers, that's for people who had to go front lines hey, listen, this is the front line of a war right here. I mean, this is the front line of a battle, and it's right in your living room, man. And I have had a glimpse of this in my personal family, and man, I don't recall feeling any more helpless in my life as a parent, not being able to help my child.
Yeah, I think a lot of families feel like they can handle this on their own, and they do try to
Mm,
handle it on their own. I've even seen families try to file their own cases in court, and then
yeah,
of course things go sideways because these are these, and they just changed a couple of statutes too last year, and that didn't help because we had to read all the pleadings, and it took time for the courts and the clerks and the other lawyers, everybody catch up. So cases were hectic to file in the a couple of months ago. So look, it's like anything. It's like, I mean, unless you're an expert mechanic, do you want to change your own oil? I mean, if you're a professional athlete, do you hire somebody that can teach, help to keep you in shape and provides you with good nutrition, right?
right, for
You
sure.
hire the experts that you need to get the job done. Otherwise, things go sideways. So, that's what we provide, is that expert, attention and care and expertise. And we've literally handled hundreds of these things already. So,
Let's talk 5 reasons to call Astor Simovich, right? Let's talk about like, hey, have a young adult off the grid who may be self harming. You don't know if they're actually doing drugs, but they go missing. Sometimes 2 3 days at a time. Call you, like give me 5 scenarios. Call Mark. Tell me that real quick.
okay. So, I mean, typically we're dealing with someone 25 to 45. Now, obviously, if they're using substances, I mean, a lot of the time we get someone who's using drugs, right? And really the drug of choice, especially now these days, is marijuana, which causes severe paranoia, delusions. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire when they have mental illness. If they're doing those things and they can't go to work, they can't go to school, they can't maintain a relationship, they sleep all day and they're up all night. Yeah, I think that's a scenario where you need to call us. Okay, if you've got somebody who has suffered severe trauma in their life, and they just can't move forward. They've done all the therapy in the world and nothing seems to work. I think that's something that we can help them with. We unfortunately see a lot of people coming in that have suffered sexual abuse. We've also worked with some professional athletes, uh, baseball players, hockey players, football players, somebody who has suffered some type of repeated concussive impact, right? I mean, which is TBI. We see a lot of that, right? We in my stepson was a college hockey player. Thank God he never got severely hurt. But we have put a number of professional athletes in treatment. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they're CTE related, although I guess there's no test for that. But you can just tell the drug use, the rages, the crazy self-destructive behavior. So things of that nature. I even had we had a family who had an adult son. I think he was 30 years old. I think when he was a teenager, got hit with it. He was playing, I don't know, softball or something, just, intramural, got hit on the head with a baseball or a softball, suffered a significant concussion. He was knocked out cold. His life went sideways ever since then. He just could not get his thing. It just completely wrecked his brain chemistry. And look, I've been in the martial arts world for a number of years, and I've had my bell rung more than once.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Me too.
yeah, it doesn't feel good to have a concussion. It's ringing for
Right.
3 days. So those types of things. Somebody who was diagnosed, perhaps with severe depression and tried to use medication, and for a while it worked, and then it stopped working, and then their life sort of fell apart. Uh, Here's something else that we see a lot of, and it's a little. We see a lot of people that at some point in their life, probably early on in their age, were diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, and they were prescribed some type of medication, Adderall, Ritalin, and it's like you just gave a 5-year-old kid crack, and you wrecked his brain chemistry, and now he's at 20, and he cannot. You just can't get things back on a level playing field, right? You've tried everything, and nothing seems to work, and he can't function. He's flunking out of school. He can't hold down a job. He can't maintain a relationship with anybody on an intimate level. Those types of things. I mean, God, I think
Let me stop you for a second, Mark. Great
we'll be
stuff.
going forever.
Because yeah, I mean, yeah, and I realized, man, there's a lot of different angles, and mine was one of violence, right? Like just unpredictable levels of violence and angst of anger that would just rise quickly, and um, and it was tough. I mean, I felt like I'm not qualified to help this kid, right? Like I'm not qualified. Like I need somebody that knows when this is happening and what triggers it and how to avoid it and build some tools to put in this kid's belt off that he's got something, right? And so if I want to ask you a tough question is, you're a lawyer, you're seeing a bunch of states who have legalized marijuana. You and I are both now living in states that have gone both recreational and medicinal, from Florida and Michigan. I mean, are you supporting that decision? Do you think it's a bad call?
Yeah, I mean, look, we just missed going recreational in the last election, but for all intents and purposes, it may as well be because it's a complete joke, right? You get one of these, oh, here's a card, you can go get it, right? You go to your whoever it is and you say, oh, I've got really bad anxiety. Oh, here's a card. And I think that's another thing. We get a lot of calls from parents saying, well, he's got a card. Okay, yeah, but interesting enough, I had my arm repaired twice last year. I tore my tricep tendon. Both times I
Mm,
had surgery, both times the surgeon gave me Oxycontin. You know what I did with it? I flushed it down the toilet.
hell yeah.
It's too addictive, too dangerous.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
big one for athletes right there. Is like they get Oxycontin, and one of the things that I've seen that's a challenge is 30-day supply of Oxycontin. Like, hey man, dealing with a pain for 3 or 4 days as an athlete is common, right? And then you're pretty much out of that pain threshold where you can navigate it. And man, 30-day supply, people are hanging around, they got pills at their house, they're mixing them with alcohol, and that creates that heroin cocktail. It's a recipe for disaster, man.
yeah. So you asked about marijuana. That is a really important question. So I was a child of the 80s growing up in England, and I had a lot of friends that used marijuana. I never used it, but I remember one weekend I went to a party, and we were in the house for 2 days straight with people smoking. I might as well have been smoking it because I'm sure it was high
Yeah.
as a cat because the house was just engulfed in.
Contact high.
Yeah, exactly. I had a contact high. And I was like, and when they talked about legalizing it here for medicinal purposes, I said, no big deal. And I was actually discussing it with a friend of mine who played 10 years in the NFL and ended up getting addicted to painkillers. He now works in the treatment industry. I'll share his name, Randy Grimes. Randy's become a good friend. Randy was the starting center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 10 years. His own
Hmm.
story is well documented. Just an amazing, warm, loving, caring human being. Just a great guy. And to boot, played in the NFL for 10 years. And he shares his journey about how he got addicted to pain pills. And when they talked about legalizing it, I said, hey, Randy, what do you think about this? You know, I don't think it's a big deal. Child of the 80s, all my friends smoked weed. None of them ended up with issues. He said, you watch this. He said, it's a gateway drug. It is dangerous. And it's going to be a major problem here in Florida. And you know what? Randy was 100% correct. It took a year or two. And wow, was he bang on the money, because the severity of the cases took off like a rocket. The amount of mental health we saw took off like a rocket. And so this stuff today is really, really dangerous. And if they're younger than 25, it will destroy their brain. It will wreck their IQ permanently. Do not let your kids use it. I don't care if they have a card. I'm telling you, this stuff is dangerous. And it is a gateway drug. And Randy was 100% correct.
Man, I appreciate that, man. I mean, it's so it was your narrative was my narrative when I was 17 years old in 1987. That was the narrative. Like, this stuff is not going to help you. It's not going to serve you. It's a gateway. You start doing this, what's next? Because, like everything else, right? With a drug, like if you do a couple beers, now I need 5, now I need 10, now I need 15. It continues to build up a tolerance. The drug OD deal is off the chart because people gateway right up into some heavy drugs. They try to get clean. 3-4 years later, they come back at that dosage where they left, and their bodies cannot manage that in any way. And I've seen 3 young people under 25, close friends in our church, that have lost children, and all kind of similar scenarios, man. Started off with marijuana, right? It's a mess.
I mean, if you got to smoke or vape or take a gummy every single day to function, there's a problem. If you have to drink, when you get up, with lunch, with dinner, before you go to bed, right, just to function, there's a problem. I mean, you know, look, my wife likes, we go out for Saturday night for dinner on Saturday night. She likes to have one drink. I don't have any, primarily because I'm driving, but two, it just doesn't make me feel that good. But I mean, if you're doing it every single day, just to be able to function, whatever it is, there's a problem. There really is. And those
And,
things,
and that's anything, right? It's cigarettes, it's vape, it's weed, it's sex, it's anything else that all these folks are just grabbing onto for it's like a Linus blanket.
it is. So don't let your
I,
kids don't let your kids use marijuana. It's dangerous.
I love it, Mark. I know you got to go. I want to respect your time, man. Thank you for joining us on the Winners Find a Way show. If you've got a family out there that's hurting today, running through this, what's the first step? I mean, obviously, if it's a serious threat, 911. But like they've gone through the ringer on this. What's 3 steps they could take right now to put a lasso on this thing and build a program to move forward?
I mean, I think the first thing to do is acknowledge that there's a problem here, right? Don't just be like, oh,
Yeah,
well, it's just a phase. He's
yeah.
going through a phase. She's going through a phase. I mean, if they're not able to function and can't stay in school or can't work, I mean, I think we're past the point where it's a phase, right? So I think number one, you got to acknowledge there's a problem. Number two,
Okay.
right? You gotta get help, right? What does that look like? Well, it depends. I mean, if it's something that can be addressed because you go on, you're able to get some type of clinical services and they're willing to do it because they're not so far down the rabbit hole they don't realize there's a problem. Great. I mean, I tell plenty of families if your loved one will go to treatment voluntarily and is willing to stay there, then you don't need me, right? I mean, why hire me if you don't need me? So I think that's number two. Let's see if we can get them into treatment voluntarily. And number three, if they're not willing to go and you've tried everything, and perhaps maybe you've even tried an intervention. Again, I'm a big fan of interventions, and I've got some great interventionists I work with. And if you can use an intervention to get your loved one into treatment and they're willing to stay, fantastic. Again, you don't need me. But if we're at the point where you have tried repeatedly to get them to go and they won't go, or they go and they stay for
Won't
7 to 10 days and they experience
Yeah.
the honeymoon phase, then there's a problem. If this is going on for years and years and years and things are just continuing to deteriorate, we need to have a conversation because it does not get better. It's like any disease. It will just continue to get worse, and it's like a metastasizing cancer. It will literally destroy the entire family and eventually the host. And so, I tell parents, be nosy, be a nosy parent. Ask what's going on in your kid's life. Look at what they're doing. Has their behavior changed? Have they become aloof? Right? All of a sudden, they're on their phone
The
20.
friends, the friend circle. Who are they
Who are they
running
hanging
with?
out with? Right? I mean, are they suddenly very secretive about what's going on in their life? Are they hanging out with people that are like, wow, I mean, did they get rid of the old friends and get these new friends, right? Party friends. Then there's something not right. And look, families just know. You'll know. They just know. I mean, parents tell me all the time. I just know there's a problem. He's not the same as he was. She's not the same, right? And so
Great stuff, man.
you
Great
can't
stuff. Mark,
continue.
Mark G. Astor, Esquire, Astor Samovich Law. Check them out at mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's where you can reach them. This is the Winners Find a Way show every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, live on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live. And then our show, our weekly podcast show, drops every Friday morning. You can find the full show there. Video show, though, live on Thursday. So check it out. You're going to want to get this episode with Mark. Reach out. You got a friend, you got family, you got people in need. Reach out to Mark Astor. Get a call in. Take a step in the right direction. Do it right for your family. Do it. Don't be that nosy person, man. Be that nosy parent. Like, keep moving to help, even when they say they don't need help, and you know better. So we'll see you next time on the Winner Find a Way show. And until then, winners find a way.